Hi guys, in this segment, I'm going to cover ownership and confidentiality of engagement documentation. We're still working on the same representative task. We need to identify the elements that constitute sufficient and appropriate documentation. This one will be tested through multiple choice because it's remembering and understanding. You also need to be able to prepare documentation so that someone can understand what was done in accordance with standards. This is an application task, so it can be tested through multiple choice or a task-based simulation. You've previously learned about audit documentation and work papers. The work papers are the property of the audit organization at all papers. Able to share the work with our
Let's cover a completely new topic: gross income reported for a decedent. When a person dies, it must be decided where income earned but not yet received and expenses incurred but not yet paid are to be reported. The representative task asks us to calculate the income representative of an estate is considered married for the use by the decedent before earned or had a payment later. Was September 1st, as the record date was before the date. Interest from U.S. savings bonds can
All right, my friends, welcome on back. We are continuing our discussion of contracts. What are we going to be talking about next? Well, the first thing is we've got to explain the rules with respect to how can you go about fulfilling your performance obligations. Normally, you just do what you've promised to do, as you're going to see. And then we've got to identify whether parties to a contract, whether both of them have fulfilled their performance obligations. Let's jump in. Let's see what we got. First of all, there are all kinds of conditions that might have to be met for a party, for one of the parties or both of the parties to perform. So first of all, conditions in a contract are permissible. Okay, whether it's a condition precedent, concurrent. If you applied for a mortgage, you couldn't get writing. It is in writing. It's also, so classic example, condition. When you go to the store, there's what we call example. We got Jane. They're not going to give you title to the house current, okay? It's got to be met before. Alrighty, folks, welcome on back. Anytime we see depreciation, what are we thinking? Not depreciating our date, partial year depreciation convention. Note, half year's worth of depreciation in 6 divided by 12 by our useful life, but then 6 date rather than January 1. We're going to buy a Jane is 270 minus 2.5 years. Net book still going to have that effect. 480 times constant rate 40%. 192. Okay, and then so on and so forth. Alrighty, so now you can stop. This is a great point to break if you haven't.
As promised, we have 2 representative tasks. This one at the remembering and understanding level. It says we want to recall the measurement focus and basis of accounting used by state and local governments for fund and government-wide financial reporting. That was a lot of words that we may not be familiar with. So let's start with measurement focus. That says which items are getting reported. We have 2 options here: the current financial resources focus and the economic. Sometimes wrap our brains around as items. Our 2 options, and we're going to tweak it some. Modified accrual method to be matched up with that current financial resource focus. So you're going to see them presented here together, right? Because they always need to be matched up. So, and if you go over sets, we're not capitalizing them. It's going to be a little bit clear category. So this was that. We're looking at all of the resource focus is using full accrual. We're looking at the resources right now. Are they sufficient?
Okay, now it's time to talk about agreed upon procedures. And remember, with agreed upon procedures, that is where the party to the engagement and the practitioner agree upon the procedures that they're going to be performing. In this situation, no opinion, no conclusion. We're just going to give findings. Now, the AICPA Blueprint Representative Task says, hey, identify the factors that a practitioner should consider when issuing agreed upon procedure. Now, as I mentioned earlier, derived is the part. They will then direct me, the CPA, what is the criteria that you're looking for and what is it I'm supposed to do for the party. If I need an external specialist, any specified threshold. These are unacceptable terms, what it is they're expecting you to do. So some essentials or accumulate data, again, interpret no. And we've talked about documenting the engagement. We should document a bunch of things. The agreement, we should document the nature, timing, and extent of the procedures to be performed and the fact that they comply with the AICPA attestation standards, including the identifying characteristics of the items tested, who performed the work and the date they completed it, the matters that are related to written representation issues, in other words, the representations are not reliable, and who reviewed the work and the date completed. We should also include the results of the evidence obtained. Now, that's what you need to do for what? For an agreed upon procedures engagement or agreed upon procedures report. In a minute, what we're going to look at is in this engagement, what would the actual report look like?